And greetings and welcome to the QCast. This is season 5, episode 13. And we're in the morning after an election. And I really, I'm not the type that wants to talk a lot about elections and things. And so my contribution to the world is bringing everybody Scott Trost this morning. This is a long overdue QCast. I mean, we're going to Romeoville, Illinois, the head men's basketball coach of the Lewis Flyers, D2. I'm used to talking D3, Coach Trost. It's great to have you. How the heck are you doing?
I'm doing good, Q. Thanks. Thanks for having me. And how are things in Dallas?
They're great, man. They're great. I was looking at your bio and it says you're in your 19th year. That kind of shocked me a little bit, dude. That made me feel old. Does it make you feel old that you've been there 19 years?
Yeah. Uh, it's been a long time. It's gone by pretty fast, but I've been fortunate to be at a good place and be at some good places. But yeah, I remember those. Excuse me. I remember those Wesleyan days well,
We'll
and
talk about those.
had a lot of good times.
A lot of good times. We'll talk about that for sure. You've really, Scott, between your time at Elmhurst as the head coach and Illinois Wesleyan and Lewis, I mean, some big stuff. You've got 469 wins. I mean, when I think of 469 wins, I think of a super old dude. And I was
I'm
doing the
old.
math.
I'm
I was doing the math on how old you might be because I mean, I'm going to be 53 next week, which means that you're no longer like 40 something, right?
I'm it's getting old, Q, and there's a lot of losses in there too.
Well, I didn't bring
If
those
you,
up. I said 469. That's
yeah,
all I said. Did I say the
and
losses?
it means you've had a lot of good, really, really good players, and
It,
I've been given a lot of support to overcome a lot of bad coaching. But I've been fortunate, no question. And like I said, I really mean I've been around a lot of really, really good people, a lot of good players.
we'll kind of get that. I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of your background because you're from, I believe it's Appleton, Minnesota, right? So you're a Minnesota native, correct, Coach Trost?
Raised in Minnesota, Appleton, Minnesota, and mom still lives up there in Fergus Falls, but uh, was raised in a town of about 1,800 people, and wouldn't trade that for anything. And was able to play, football, basketball, baseball, golf, run track. You were able to participate in everything, and it was a great childhood growing up in a small community like that.
You went to University of Minnesota Morris, graduated in 1985, played some hoops there, correct, Scott?
Uh, little football, and then tried out for basketball. I wasn't a great player by any means, and and then I decided to go into coaching right away, and uh, I always had a passion, I think, for sports, and uh, decided that was kind of the career path that I wanted to choose, and worked towards that goal.
One thing that people don't know, they don't remember, is that I think your first coaching gig, or at least one of them, before there was such a thing called a grad assistant, you were sort of a grad assistant at Illinois Wesleyan as you're getting your master's at Illinois State. You graduated from Illinois State with your master's in '88. How the heck did you catch on with Denny Bridges and the Titans as a grad assistant? How did that work?
Well, again, I think when you're trying to get into coaching, I think you're looking for any avenue to do that. And I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't a great player by any means, and I didn't have a guy behind me that was pushing me and giving me direction. So I applied to a lot of places, and I was accepted at Illinois State for grad school, and I went and talked to the director and asked if there's any way I could volunteer at Illinois State at the time. And he goes, I don't know how good of an experience that would be at that time. He says, why don't you go down the street? There's a great program. And, and Denny was down there. So I went down there and showed up one day and asked him if there's anything I could do to be part of his program. And very appreciative of him giving me the opportunity. And it's probably no more than a glorified manager at the time. And I think like anything, Q, you got to earn people's trust and respect, and just kind of, worked my way into being a passer and helping out in practice any way I could, making recruiting calls, and just kind of and made contacts along the way. And I think because of that, then that helped me get my next job. And then, then kind of the rest is history. But, very appreciative of the opportunity that I was given at Wesleyan at that time.
I know that after you were an assistant at Minnesota State Mankato, that was a big step for you. And then I know that Jim Weitzel was a big part of your development as a coach. Can you talk about working for Jim Weitzel at Elmhurst?
Well, yeah, and I think because of my connections with Illinois Wesleyan and Denny Bridges, I think Denny helped me get the job at Mankato State, where Dan McCarroll was the coach.
That's right.
And Dan McCarroll used to be at North Park, so there was a connection there. And then Jim Weitzel used to be the assistant at Mankato before I got there.
Right.
And left Mankato to be the head coach at Elmhurst College. So while I was at Mankato, I developed a friendship, with Jim, even though he wasn't there. There was a connection because of the Mankato State job, but so I developed a friendship with there. I was at Mankato for 2 years, and then Jim had I don't know if it wasn't a full-time job, but it was what was it? A sports information and assistant basketball, I think, for $9,500.
Nice.
And went to so I was at Mankato for 2 years with Dan, and then went to Elmhurst with Jim for assistant sports information director. And you know me, Bob, I'm not a good writer.
I can't picture you
I'm
in
not
the SID job at all.
sharpest knife in the shed. I'm not so I went as a sports information director and assistant basketball coach for $9,500 back in whatever it was, late 80s. And that, developed the friendship with Jim, and, to this day is probably my best friend in coaching.
Did you go straight from the assistant at Elmhurst to the head gig at Elmhurst when he left? Or was there something between those two?
Well, I was sports information and then and assistant basketball, and then I think it was that for 2 years, and then I was assistant football because I had a little football background, and assistant basketball and recruiting coordinator, and then I think we set that Elmhurst. We broke the NCAA record for passing yards allowed against North Park when I was there, and I was in charge of defensive back. So that didn't last long, and I think we were cheating the kids at that time on the football side. But so I was that for a couple of years, and then when Jim left to take the Lewis job, I was then given or was promoted to the head coach at Elmhurst. So I was the head coach then at Elmhurst, I think, for 4 years.
Now,
but yeah, I was given the job right after Jim left.
One of the most I couldn't remember what year this was, but one of the most legendary staffs of all time at any level of division 1, 2, or 3 is what was there a staff that was Scott Trost, Bosko Jurakovic, and Chris Jans? Were those people all together on a staff, or was it different times?
I think there were different times, Q. I think I don't think there was overlap there.
You had Bosko. Bosko was your assistant at some point, right?
Bosko when he left North Park. And again, I think, Bosko made you feel stupid because of how smart he was. I think, he was really, really good, and learned a great deal from Bosko, and, one of the all-time greats, I think, in college basketball, and not just, at Division III, but won national championships. But, so I brought him on, and but I think he was after Chris, if I remember right. And, but yeah, Chris was an interesting character too.
And of course, Chris ended up, at Illinois State, and that's how I got to know Janzi is back because him, and
yeah,
he was running around Bloomington Normal the same time you were, and you introduced me to a whole bunch of interesting characters in those days.
As you did yourself to me.
Yes, I did. I had to take great pride in that. And
Yeah.
I remember a I remember an evening at Schooners with and I'm sorry I'm not remember, is it Feller, the guy, the
Ron
legend
Felling.
Ron Felling was at Schooners drinking beers and eating wings with us for like 6 hours, like it was no big deal. And so that was just one example I remember. Legendary Bobby Knight stories, and it was like unbelievable.
One of the really, and again, Ron is a great person, and I haven't spoken to him in a bit, but he can tell stories, and one of the funnier guys you've met.
When you left Elmhurst and you go from D3 to D1, so how the heck did you get an assistant job at Michigan in the Big Ten? How did that work?
Well, while you're at Elmhurst, I ran Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and B.J. Armstrong's camps during the summer.
Yeah.
Well, I ran B.J. Armstrong was one of Scott Perry's best friends. Scott Perry was an assistant at Michigan at the time, and B.J. obviously knew him. And then Brian Dutcher was an assistant at Michigan, and I got to know Dutch while I was working at Mankato State. So I had those two connections, and then Steve Fisher's son, Mark, I believe, came to Jordan's camp.
Right.
So there was some connection through Jordan's camp, and through my connections with Dutch when I was working at Mankato. So I went, and that time it was a restricted earnings position. There wasn't, I think it was 2 full times and a restricted earnings, and then whatever other staff you had. It's not like it is now where you got all these positions. So I interviewed for it and went up there and met with Fish and Dutch and those guys, and it worked out. And for 5 years, wasn't all with Steve, but was an unbelievable experience. And again, thankful and grateful for the opportunity that I was given to be there for that amount of time.
And you got to recruit some dudes. Like, was that like the tractor trailer era? Were you in the mix on,
Well,
like, who were some of the guys you recruited and were part of there?
well, when I got there, we had pros. We had like Robert Traylor, Maceo Baston, Maurice Taylor, Lou Bullock, Travis Conlon. I mean, we had some dudes, and so I wasn't per se involved in the recruiting of those guys. But then went through that first year, and we probably underachieved, to be honest with you. I think we were high as 4th in the country and beat Duke at Duke, and I think we ended up 9-9 in the Big Ten, and we ended up winning the NIT. We didn't make the NCAA tournament, but and then there was a whole bunch of stuff with Fish, and Steve was let go, and I don't understand the reason why and all that stuff, but we don't have to get into that. But and then Brian Ellerby was given the job, and I stayed on with Brian for 4 years, and was able to recruit some good players, but we were under some restrictions at that time. And
Right.
Jamal Crawford, we recruited Lavelle Blanchard, Kevin Gaines, so we recruited some really good players, but it was tough given the situation there, and we struggled there the last couple of years, but unbelievable experience, and met a lot of unbelievable people, and just a great like I said, a great experience that was had there.
And so then so Illinois Wesleyan goes to the Final Four in March 2001. They finished 3rd in the country there, and Denny Bridges soon after announces his retirement. And I don't even know where to start with this era, but I think that was probably a pretty stressful, like, transition in first year. Just being, I was very closely connected with you and the program and the whole, like, I was there for the whole thing. And is it fair to say that, like, replacing Denny and you being a guy that wasn't a Wesleyan guy, who's this guy? This guy's from Elmhurst in Michigan, and like, what was that? Was that a tough? It turned out fantastic, by the way. We're going to get to that. Was it stressful for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was, but I think prior to that, though, people don't know I met with Denny probably in January,
Right.
and we had a free weekend, so came over there and met with Denny, and he thought, that this might be his last year. So I, asked if I'd be interested in it, and obviously, said yes. But so anyway, it ended up that he did retire, and we ended up getting fired. Head coach gets fired, everybody gets fired at that level. And so it came down to I was offered the Illinois Wesleyan job and the Mankato State job, and I chose the Illinois Wesleyan job for a variety of reasons. But needless to say, that first year was difficult, and probably one of the two or three hardest, most difficult years of my coaching career is that year. And for, again, a variety of reasons. And I think it's never easy to replace a legend. And you try and come in there and maybe fit in and do things
Right.
the way you're probably not used to. And I learned a lot of, I think, valuable lessons in that year. But it wasn't easy, but you got to, survive and learn from it and move on. And I think we did that.
Yeah, that 21-22 year, I can't remember the final record, somewhere around 500, or I just remember that, it was a transition year. During that season, you go out, so you had a bunch of really good guys that Denny left, but then you went out and you got what's got to be the greatest Division III recruiting class that I've ever seen. Literally, can't think of one that would touch it. 2 first-team All-American in Adam Dauksas and Keelan Miljanovich. Not to mention the Jones twins and Schweer and Matt Arnold and Mike McGraw and Jason Fisher, and at the time Mike McCain, who got hurt. I mean, Scott, that is the most ridiculous D3 class. Just talk a little bit about that group that you were able to recruit in your first recruiting class.
Again, I think the one thing, and Dauksas is probably, get emotional talking about Adam because he's, he's close, and he's a great kid, and he kind of bought into my way of doing things. And again, I'm not always the easiest guy to play for, but I think Adam had the toughness that I wanted. And I think I knew I had to go out and try and get some guys that kind of fit my personality, and like, Schweer, tough, hard nose, blue collar. Jones is tough, hard nose. Keelan, was ultra talented and, was highly recruited, and was fortunate enough to be able to convince him to come to, Illinois Wesleyan. And it was, again, that was the group that, kind of, again, made it fun for me and brought back I guess the belief in what I was doing was the right thing to do. And but again, all those guys, and I don't want to dismiss any of them, they all played a part in it. And like, Fisher and Matt Arnold, Mike McGraw, all those guys were an instrumental part of our success there.
Yeah, you take what I thought was cool in the 2002-03 season. You won the league, and it was a combination of those kids you recruited and the Denny guys, because you obviously had Luke Caston and Hubbard and Camerdell and Salagi and those guys, like Starkey playing a huge role. But then Adam was your point guard, and Keelan got in there a little bit. It was this cool blend. You win the league, you go to the Sweet 16. That was at Randolph-Macon. Unfortunately, I remember that because Jake Sheley beat me in one-on-one in the old gym that's like 100 years old off to the side. That's the worst athletic moment of my life, Scott. Would you agree that?
Would you admit that on your podcast.
It's a healing process. I lost the game of one-on-one. There was a bunch of people watching,
So is
and
this cathartic for you
yeah,
admitting to you got beat by Jake Sheley?
well, first of all, it's one-on-one, and he's playing hack a shack. So the guy's like 5'2", I'm 6'3", I'm backing him down. I'm going for my little patented shot, and he's just grabbing me. Well, he can't foul out of one-on-one, and then he's making 40 footers. Like, it's terrible loss, terrible.
I would not admit that. I seriously. How do you admit you get beat by Jake Sheley? You
It
know?
happened again. It happened at Worcester. Then remember that next year went to Worcester. I think he got me there too, and I need to put it out there in the world.
Yeah.
I just needed to get through.
Well, hope that makes you feel better.
The next year you
Congrats,
added.
Jake.
Yeah, I mean Jake's watching this right now. He's going to screenshot this for sure. The next year, so you land another first team All American. You bring in Zach Freeman, not to mention his brother Andrew. You bring in another great class, and Zach was a pretty unique Division III dude. He's got 6'7", lefty, bouncy. Like, talk a little bit about landing Zach Freeman. That was a big deal.
Really, really good, obviously. And I think, obviously the thing is when you're recruiting Zach, you had to recruit Andrew too. And Andrew was, a good player. But, I remember talking to the mom and dad that like, hey, you're not just recruiting Zach, you got to recruit them both. And, Zach obviously was a really, really talented young man and bouncy, athletic, soft touch. Thought if you put him with Emilianovic and Dauksas and
Ugh.
Corey Jones and Chris Jones and guys like that, you had to start at something really, really good. And obviously, he went on to have a great career and played overseas for a while. And again, those kids were great kids too. And like I said before, you have those type of roster, you overcomes a lot of bad coaching.
You won the league in 03, 04, 05. That year where Adam and Keelan were seniors and Zach was a junior. People asked
underachieved, probably, to be honest with you.
People asked him what's the best Illinois Wesleyan team, and I think you always say, well, pick Jack Sickman's senior year, and then it's a debate. I think Ron Rose's senior year, and the Chris Simich, Crabtree, and then that team you had, just an unbelievable team. You get to the Final Four, and boy, I
think
remember
we struggled, if I remember right. Didn't we start out? And I don't remember exactly. Didn't we start out like 10-0 or 11-0 or something?
I think 11-0, and I think we lost the CCIW opener, and so
then we go
0-1.
9-5 or something in the league, and kind of struggled at times, and then kind of found our stride down the stretch. And
right,
I think Dauksas maybe didn't he have someone to make a 35-footer or something to win a game for? It's kind of blurry, but I know again we probably underachieved, and thanks in large part to my dumb coaching, but they found a way. And again, that team was good enough to win a national championship, and I think that year we lose to what is it, West Virginia or what's
Virginia Wesleyan and
Virginia
Tauntaun
Wesleyan,
Belinga,
and they led, I think, probably for a minute of that or 2 minutes of that game.
Yeah.
And I think we led most of that game, and I think we ended up getting beat by 1 or 2 or whatever it was.
It was 2.
And then we beat
Amherst
in the consolation game at that time. But and then Virginia Wesleyan goes on to beat the team. What's the team from Ohio?
I can't.
I got it right. Wittenberg. They beat Wittenberg.
Yeah.
And they led again. I think Wittenberg led most of that game, and Virginia Wesleyan ends up winning the national title. And I think probably led for 4 or 5 minutes that whole time. But 4 really evenly matched teams, and those kids. I thought we had a chance to win that thing, and disappointing we didn't.
Yeah, it was that run in the tournament. From getting in as a Pool C, and you're right. Like we had a rough good 9-5 in the league, and one of the wins was OT at home against Wheaton, and the other was Dauksas making the 35-40 footer to send it to OT against Elmhurst and Chris Martin. And so, but the guys, you guys got in, and I can't remember this. It was up at Whitewater, beat Whitewater, and then that game, that unbelievable game at Lawrence, and that was a special team. It was a special season, and so that season ends. You're coming off a Final Four, and talk about the decision to leave. I know that I remember talking to you midway through the year. It's funny, like little things that you remember. And I remember you saying, "Q, if I ever leave, I'm starting to think that Ron Rose is the guy." And I was like, "Why did you just tell me that?" I was like, "That's not a good sign." I just remember you saying that. "Q, if I ever leave, I'm starting to think that Ron Rose might be the guy." So tell me the decision. Obviously, Lewis, great opportunity. What went through the decision to leave IW for Lewis?
I don't know. I think there were a lot of things, Q, going on at the time, and I just felt I needed a change. And um I did like the idea, the thought of recruiting with scholarships, and I knew, Jim was here and thought you could do good things here, and there was good people here. It's a great location. It was an unbelievable league at that time, probably the best Division II league in the country, and I guess just maybe a new challenge, and was going through some things personally at that time. So I just thought maybe that the best thing for me at that time was maybe a change of scenery, and try and do it someplace else. And was given this opportunity, and just thought it was too good to pass up.
And it's been amazing, right? 19 seasons as head coach of the Flyers. You've absolutely crushed it there. You've had great players, great seasons. You've been the coach of the D2 Coach of the Year in Illinois many, many times since your time at Lewis, as you were at Illinois Wesleyan. One of the dudes I wanted to ask you about is like Max Struss. I mean, he played for you. You recruited him. You landed him. He played for you for, I think, 2 years before he went to DePaul. Now he's a Cleveland Cavalier. Was Max Struss an under-recruited guy, or did you steal him, or how did that come about?
Well, I think Max's brother Marty played for me.
That's right.
In a 2000, I don't know, 8, 9, 10, 11 area, somewhere in there. So Marty played for me for 4 years, and I knew John, his dad, for quite a while. And so Max was at our games, and Max was just a little little fella. And Max started to get some publicity, and his senior year, and went and watched him. We recruited him, and he grew quite a bit. And I think, I don't know, 6'1" to 6'5" or whatever he was. And he was recruited. Now he had a lot of, obviously, small college, and some D1 interest. I think he had some D1 scholarships. Sure. Chicago State maybe, and I don't know if there's some other Jacksonville State or whatever. I don't remember, but I think Max would like to have gone to Loyola, would have liked to have gone to UIC or Valpo, but I think those coaches at that time looked at him and thought he probably wasn't good enough. And obviously we recruited Max hard, and I remember this day is like, we had John Concher was supposed to come and visit us, and John Concher played in the NBA too.
Right.
And John was from, I think West Chicago maybe, or some North Chicago, somewhere up there. I'm not sure, but so I called John Struss, and I said, "John, this kid's going to come and visit." And I said, "I can't, we only have a scholarship left. I can't, I want Max." So he goes, "Well, we'll call you back that day or that night or whatever." And they called back that night and committed, and Contra never visited, and Max came, and was an unbelievable player, and a great a great guy and a great kid. Worked his butt off. First guy in, last guy to leave. Great leader, and really, really developed. And I think Max, maybe even to this day, kind of has that chip on his shoulder a little bit that like was under recruited, undervalued, underappreciated, or whatever. But had an unbelievable 2 years here, and I think Max scored over 1,000 points here in 2 years, and I think he scored over 1,000 points in DePaul in 2 years. So
Right.
uh, was a really really good player, and we had we had a great team here, and we had it set up. Max was a sophomore. We went to the championship game of our league the year after he left. So we had it set up, but I understand why Max did it. He did it the right way. Back then, you had to sit out,
Right.
and was honest, and through the whole process. And again, I'm happy for Max that it worked out the way it did.
Incredible player, part of a series of great teams that you've had this year. It's a great time of year. It's time to get it rolling. Look, you guys are picked fourth in the GLVC. You're coming off 18-13, 12-8. So in terms of the coaches poll, it was Truman State, Illinois Springfield, William Jewell. Is that Coach Stein's alma mater? Is William Jewell?
I think so.
I
I
think,
think Stein 99. I don't know if he graduated. He may have went there.
we have to dig out the transcripts. I've seen photos of him, and in the photos, I see a lot of beer, and I never see a diploma. So that's
Yeah,
another QCAS, maybe, right?
that's going to be an investigation, because I'm not sure.
The
Stein
rules
can
were
grad.
the rules were looser then, but William
Yeah,
Jewell I believe, is the place. And then you guys
I
are
think
fourth.
William Jewell a junior college back in the day, or was it always been a 4 year? I don't know.
I think it's been a 4 year, but I can't prove it. But we do need to dig into kind of what's been going on in their program going back
Yeah,
50 years. You've got some good guys coming back. Looks like from your roster, Ryan Renfro, Rob Stroud, Darren Vanderheit, all back, all big forwards that play for you. What's the outlook on this year? So you're picked fourth. Talk about like upcoming season expectations, all that kind of stuff.
Q. I don't know. I mean, we've had some exhibitions. We played Illinois State and we lost by 7, and
Yeah.
I thought we played okay there. We played Northwestern in an exhibition game, and I think it was an 8-point or 10-point game with 8 minutes to go, and played pretty good for about 32 minutes. In the last 8 minutes, they handed it to us pretty good. We turned it over, and they hit some threes, and I think it ended up being 25 or 7. But we've done some good things. And then we had a close scrimmage against North Park, and the way they play. I mean, they turned us over 26 times, and they just
Wow.
pressed you. We weren't ready for it, but
Yeah.
he's got some athletic kids, but I don't know. We'll find out. We got a GLVC GMAC Challenge event this weekend against Malone, who's a good team out of Ohio, and then Tiffin out of Ohio. So we'll find out. And our schedule's brutal. I mean, we go to
Right.
Ferris State, which is a top 10 team, top 20 team in the country. We go to Grand Valley comes here. Wayne State comes here, who beat Detroit. And then our conference is good. It's not what it used to be. I mean, we've lost a lot of teams from our league, have gone to
Sure.
Division One, but I think we're relying on some newcomers. We got some transfers, and with this portal business now, you're not sure exactly what you got. So this is going to kind of be a learning process here early as we go, and we'll try and figure it out. But we'll find out in a hurry where we're at. And a big thing here is we just got to grow and get better.
Just a couple more quick things to ask you about before I let you go. This has been a lot of fun. Many people don't know that you made a cameo in the worldwide famous documentary Hoop Dreams. I mean, when I watch Hoop Dreams, there is a very young Scott Trost in the bleachers scouting. Who were you scouting? The kid that the movie was about? I can't remember.
Arthur Agee. He actually committed to us.
To Elmhurst. Was it
back in
Elmhurst?
It was Elmhurst. So we were recruiting Arthur, and he committed to us. And then I think he went and played in an all-star game, if I remember right. And I don't know if Mark Aubrey was in that all-star game at the same time.
I'll bet about the same
And
age.
and Arthur played really well, and then from then he went junior college, and then he went on to Division I and stuff. But like Arthur was a great young man, and his story is unbelievable. But it was certainly fun trying to recruit him. I thought we had him, but lost him at the end.
Yeah, in Hoop Dreams, you got to look for this young guy with, I think you had glasses on.
I
In
had
the
an eye
vision.
infection. I had an eye infection at the time, and those glasses were like, Coke bottle glasses. But like, yeah, that's a long time ago.
Yeah, it's so anyone watching Hoop Dreams, just look for Scott Trost.
Yeah, I was
Another,
filmed for probably about half hour for that 10-second spot. They had to redo it.
oh man, another quick one. I'm sure you have several former players that are coaching now. One in particular that I've been following is this guy, Steve Schweer. Steve has done an unbelievable job at Illinois College, building them up to, top 25 type program. And they had a great showing in the tournament last year. Just talk a little bit about your guy, Steve Schweer, because I think his teams play a lot like Steve had to play for you.
Well, I mean, when we recruited Schweer's really, really intelligent. Like, he's got above a 30 ACT and like uh hard worker, blue collar, hard nose. Um, and I don't know what Steve would say about his experience at Illinois Wesleyan. I think if I remember right, didn't he have over 30 points in a JV game one time?
He
And
lit Elmhurst up in a JV game, lit him up.
and look, and Steve was athletic and but he played a really, really vital role for that team. And he was our blue collar guy, hard worker, dive on the floor, hustle plays, 50-50 balls, whatever you could. And he was a guy that you didn't have to worry about his attitude, his work ethic, or whatever. But I haven't seen his teams play at Illinois College, but I'm sure that they're reflective of his personality, like you said, and defensively, I'm sure they're in your face probably a little bit.
Yeah.
And, I don't know how Steve coaches, but I do. I am pretty sure that his personality reflects how his teams play. And I've seen Steve on the road quite a bit recruiting, and I think he's got a really, really bright future in this game. And I know he works extremely hard at it, and it's a passion of his. And I'm sure he'll do a great job going forward here with the Blue Boys or wherever else he goes. But
yeah, he's killing it.
He's done a really, really good job. I'm proud of him.
Just two more quick things. You're a great person to ask. Division II versus Division III. Us Division III people, we're always kind of trying to make a case that like our guys can play. Many of them could play higher. And you're a good person to just get perspective on this because you've coached at the highest level of Division III and the highest level of Division II in an unbelievable conference in a great program. How would you describe the differences between, D3 and D2?
Again, I don't think there's. I remember that team with Dauksas and Emilianovic came up here and played Weitzel's team at Lewis in a close scrimmage or an exhibition or whatever you want to call it. And Jim's team at that time, I think, was one of the better teams they had here, and we beat them in a close scrimmage that year. And I say that only because I do think the top teams in the CCIW can compete in our league. They're not winning our league, but I think
Right.
they could compete. Now they're going to have to do it every night.
Yeah.
Against there's no really bad teams, I don't think, in our league. And I think that the beauty of our league, we used to have Southern Indiana, Kentucky Wesleyan, Bellarmine, Northern Kentucky.
Man.
We don't have that now.
Right.
So I think there's a lot of parity in our league, and I don't think there's a dominant team. But, so I do think, the best players in Division III, the best teams in Division III could compete in our league. They won't win our league, but, could they compete? Yes. And I do think, the best players in the CCIW can be, good players in the GLVC. Could Zach Freeman and Keelan Dauksas and those guys play here. Absolutely. Would love to have had them at times, but I just think the night in and night out, Thursday, Saturday, back to back to back to back, every week can wear on some teams. But and again, like our league, I think our league could go play in some lower Division I leagues, and Lehigh, for example, loses by 47 to Northwestern with the same exact roster
Right.
Northwestern had, and so I think a lot of our guys can play at Division I, and I think we could compete at Division I in the lower levels. So, but again, I think it's all relative, and I think team kids got to go where it's a good fit and have a great experience regardless of what level it is.
Well, I remember the game against the Illini that you coached at Assembly Hall. I remember after the game talking to you, and I think you had talked to Bruce Weber after the game about, Adam and Keelan in particular, and Zach. I think it was Adam and Keelan he talked about. He referenced them by their uniform number. That he said like they'd be in our top 10, and I think you'd agree. Like in that game, you really realize how thin the margins could be, because Adam and Keelan and Zach, D3 guys, boy, they held their own against the Illini that day, against a really good Illini team.
Yeah, and I don't remember what that score ended up. What did that score end up?
It ended up being like 20, but boy, it was tied with 13 minutes to go.
Yeah, and I think again, anytime you can play a Division I team, and we've beat 3 of them here. I think we've beaten Loyola, UIC, DePaul. Those guys probably look at it like, and they may not bring their A game and may not be focused and whatever, but I do think there's certain guys that fall through the cracks for whatever reason that could compete at higher levels, and it's hard to measure a guy in a young man's competitive spirit. And in Dauksas, you never question his competitiveness. And some people didn't like it. Some people, I remember, they didn't like this, and they didn't like his vibrato, and they didn't like, some of his antics, and, forget that. Give me a kid that's going to compete, and, I'll live and breathe with him every day. And like, there's I think that team and a lot of those kids had that competitive spirit that you can't measure. And like, that makes up for a lot of other things.
Last question I just had to ask you about the legend. During your whole career at Illinois Wesleyan, Art Kimball was the guy on the mic doing the games on WJBC. I know you were close to Art. You spent a lot of time with Art. Art passed away years ago. What a great guy. Just I wanted to ask you about Art before we close this out.
One of the best. And I would relay a story on here that you're involved with, but I can't. And you can elaborate if you wish. But Art was
a legend.
Yes, it was. Art was he was really, really kind to me. Had a lot of great conversations, and Art probably talked me off the ledge a couple times, but and his wife, very
Mary Lou.
Very kind people, and I can't say enough good things about Art. And the time we had there, he brings back a lot of really, really good memories with him, and was very, very again, he treated me so well in maybe some difficult times.
Well, I appreciate your time, Scott. And I'm going to give you the final thoughts. I'll just say, there's a lot of I think there's a lot of confusion around the Scott Trost era, and why did Scott leave? And we wanted him to stay, and I don't know. That's been 19 years now. And what I would say is those 5 years were some of the best 5 years that I have followed the Titans. And I have followed the Titans since I was a freshman. So I'm going on, I don't know, I'm 35 plus years at this point, Scott. And those kids you had, to this day, when I see them at games, I mean, some of the greatest Titans we've ever had. It was fun being close to you during that time, and both at the games and just out and about in Bloomington Normal. There was a lot going on, Coach Trost. There was a lot happening during those eras.
Yeah, there was. I think the 5 years I had there, like, and I again, I haven't been back to Wesleyan games, so I don't know what it's like now, but I think the last couple of years there, Q, if I'm not mistaken, we averaged maybe like 2,600 people a game.
Yep.
Um, and I thought at the time that was probably, I think, more than maybe 100 Division I schools.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And again, I think we had some really, really good teams, and it was a fun environment. And like, those are a lot of, great memories, and like, really thankful for those players. And again, I think you remember some of those wins, you remember the tough losses, but I think you remember, too, like a lot of the people there, and whether it's Stein or, Chad Hudson, yourself, I mean, Andy, I mean, all these guys. And, so away from the basketball court, we had a lot of fun, and there was, a lot of good times. And, it was a great 5 years, and look back on it with a lot of, fondness, and a lot of really, quality memories, or great memories, and a lot of quality people that we met. And, it was a great time.
And that's what Titan Nation thanks God is we look back at that era as like awesome, and everyone's been excited to watch your success at Lewis. And I think I got some word that the Titans and Flyers were supposed to play a little scrimmage this year until Butler came calling, maybe. So maybe that could happen next year. I'd love to get to that.
We would love to, I'm not playing them in an exhibition game, though. I'll play them in a closed scrimmage. So I'm not gonna. I'm afraid they'd beat us. But no, I think it'd be really fun, and we'll see. Hopefully it can happen, and it'd be fun to have them up here.
Well, thanks so much, Scott, for your time. This is a long overdue QCast. I don't even know. I'm glad that you figured out how to use, when we first connected Zoom here, 45 minutes ago. I didn't know that we'd get this done. You don't seem too strong on the technology.
Hey, I'm technologically illiterate. Thank God for my assistant coaches and my administrative assistant, my secretary, but like they gotta do everything. So I can type an email and I can get on Zoom if it's linked right. But there's one thing that I want to bring up, and I don't know if the Q podcasters know this.
Sure.
That you invented the untucked shirt rule.
So I did, and it was in 2004, and it was in Florida. Yep. We were in the Southwest Florida, Naples.
Yep.
And there was a 10-year window where guys were wearing untucked shirts. And that night in Florida, when we played Florida Gulf Coast, I wore my shirt untucked, and it started a revolution that spread the word, the world. And you started that trend. Yeah.
That fashion trend was started by Bob Quillman in Naples, Florida.
Correct. And you saw it, and Scribe was there. Mosey was there. There's a lot of Stein was there. A lot of people can prove that, right?
Yes, they can. So I think you should get some residuals or whatever it is. I mean,
there's a company called Untucked. There's a company that made, they still exist. Untucked took what I got, what I started.
It's a great brand. It's a great brand.
I'm making no money from that. I'm making no money from this QCast.
They took what you fashioned, what you started. You should, yes. But people probably don't know that you started that trend, that fashion trend.
I've never publicized.
So congratulations. You can be proud of that. It's really, really good.
I appreciate you sending this off on an uplifting moment, because I did bare my soul with the Jake Sheley loss. And so, Scott Trost, we will leave the QCast there. I appreciate the kudos on the untucked shirt trend that I started. And
yes,
we will all be rooting for the Lewis Flyers, who start when? When's your opener?
Friday, Saturday. We got Malone and Tiffin in that challenge, and then we go to Ferris, and then we have Grand Valley and Wayne State. So we'll find out in a hurry.
I'll be in Bloomington. Titans got Cal Lutheran and either Platteville or Calvin. So I'll be a little bit south of you. I'll be checking the scores. Coach Trost,
is Stein there?
I'll get Stein there. Yeah.
Tell all the guys I say hello.
I'll tell them you all said hello. They all say hello to you. Coach Trost, thank you so much, my friend.
All right, Q. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.